Without energy, life cannot exist. While our bodies burn calories, civilization burns coal and gasoline. And the most complex chemical reactions take place in the depths of nuclear reactors. Energy does not come from nowhere. It must be extracted. In this respect, both an individual person and a huge corporation are in the same position. How is energy extracted? For most of its history, humanity burned something for this purpose. A primitive cave savage who roasts meat and heats water over a fire made of burning logs may seem primitive to us now, but only until we find out that 90% of the world's energy is produced by steam turbines invented in 1884. The essence of their operation is, generally, the same. They heat water by burning coal, shale, oil, or gas. Can something more futuristic be invented instead of burning whatever is available like Neanderthals? After all, it is the 21st century. Scientists have been thinking about this problem for a long time. At the end of the 19th century, the first hydroelectric power plants appeared, and almost immediately after that, wind power plants. In 1954, with a difference of several months, the first nuclear power plant began operating in the USSR, and the first workable solar panels were created in the USA. But the Green Revolution never happened. Why? Let's try to figure it out. Energy sources are usually divided into renewable and non-renewable. Strictly speaking, there are no infinite ones among them. The question is how long it will take before they run out. Coal, oil, and gas are considered non-renewable because known reserves will last for a couple of centuries, at most a millennium. The energy of water and wind for hydroelectric power plants and wind turbines will last at least hundreds of millions of years. Solar energy, several billion. And nuclear energy, theoretically, can be used for some time even after the last stars in the universe go out. It would seem that everything is logical. We should build wind turbines instead of scaring each other with headlines saying oil will run out by some particular year. But there are several problems. And the main one is that fossil fuel is very cheap. There are still plenty of places on Earth where coal was mined manually and transported manually to the place where it will burn, turning into electricity. Compared to fuel for example, nuclear power plants, coal is practically lying underfoot. Millions of years are millions of years. But the costs of damming a river to build a hydroelectric power plant or creating a photovoltaic cell for a solar power plant are enormous. While coal, here it is. As part of caring for the environment, you can abandon gasoline engines and switch to electric cars that run on cheap electricity. But it is cheap precisely because it is produced from that same coal. A city that switches to electric transport becomes cleaner. That is wonderful. And the residents of Beijing or Shanghai most likely will not object. But the burning fuel continues to smoke, just somewhere on the outskirts where the power plant has been moved. The second point is that electric does not necessarily mean environmentally clean and ethical. For example, the production of electronics is impossible without mining coltan, a rare and valuable ore. Coltan is mined mainly in Africa, and the working conditions in the mines there are typical African conditions. The struggle for coltan deposits partly led to the so-called Second Congo War, also known as the African World War. The war lasted from 1998 to 2003. 9 states were involved, and 5 million people died. The average Californian housewife who buys a Tesla because she sincerely loves all living things most likely has never heard of this war. No less important a problem is lithium. All electric cars have huge batteries. These are lithium-ion batteries, just like in a smartphone. Due to the chemical characteristics of lithium, it is very difficult to recycle and reuse. An electric car battery loses capacity over time. It is a consumable that needs to be replaced. Currently, only 10% of such batteries are recycled in the USA. The remaining 90% are either buried until better times, in the hope that descendants will figure out what to do with them, or simply thrown into landfills. Lithium is not exactly safe. Poisoning from it can generally cause severe brain damage in humans. But let us assume that these issues are solved. UN peacekeepers have been deployed to Africa, and the electric car can operate exclusively from renewable energy sources and is made exclusively from biodegradable materials. Then one more unsolvable infrastructure question remains. Green energy has one feature: unstable generation. Solar panels are useless on cloudy days or at night. Wind generators stop in windless weather. Hydro turbines are extremely sensitive to water flow. Such dependence on natural cycles will require the creation of large-scale energy storage systems. Modern batteries, even with all their efficiency, are too expensive and resource-intensive for global implementation. For example, the largest energy storage facility is located at the Ouarzazate solar power plant in Morocco. The total area is 30 square kilometers. The power plant is capable of storing 3 gigawatt-hours of energy. New York's daily consumption is tens of thousands of times greater. For New York to survive a week without sun and wind under such conditions, the entire state would have to be built over with batteries. In California, where conditions for solar energy are much better, there is the opposite problem: excess energy. While there were few solar panels, the load on the power grid was distributed normally. But with their spread, the load became such that panel owners during peak hours are forced to pay extra to sell their energy into the general grid. There is no technical possibility to keep that electricity in reserve at that moment. On the contrary, the problem is finding somewhere to put it. California electricity prices therefore fluctuate throughout the day, and somewhere around noon become negative. A similar problem exists with wind turbines, with the difference that at least for the sun, one can still assume that it will rise every day. In northern countries, wind turbines also freeze in winter. In Sweden, for example, in such cases they have to be sprayed with hot water from helicopters. Blades are also a consumable. They wear out, and they also have to be sent to landfills or recycled. And finally, every wind power plant is a forest orderly. According to statistics, every wind turbine currently kills an average of 3 birds per year for every 1 gigawatt of generated energy. All this sounds rather unpromising. Then why does green energy continue to develop? Right now, the main reason is government subsidies. In 2022, for example, the Biden administration planned to spend $369 billion to support green energy. The European Union responded with its own program, 272 billion euros. Not all the money is handed out directly here. Some reaches the industry in the form of tax deductions and similar measures. For example, in California, state authorities compensated $7,500 from the budget when purchasing an electric car. One Tesla has received $38 billion in budget subsidies, deductions, and preferential loans throughout its history, and most likely would never have become profitable without government support. Such gigantic budgets are being carved up in green energy that in many places, wind turbines built with subsidies simply remain standing, disconnected from the grid afterward. They have already fulfilled their main function. Taxpayers' money was successfully stolen. Is there hope for renewable energy sources? Strange as it may seem, there is. Nuclear. It is a paradox, but right now nuclear power plants are one of the cleanest energy sources. They use radioactive fuel, which can be repeatedly restored in a special type of nuclear reactor, a fast neutron reactor. In such reactors, the same substance can be used dozens of times, potentially for thousands of years. Of the 7 operating fast neutron reactors, 5 are currently located in Russia. Of course, after Chernobyl and Fukushima, no one would call nuclear power plants environmentally clean. But, cynical as it may sound, in the event of an accident, radioactive substances will eventually stop emitting radiation. But coal burned at power plants turns into carbon dioxide, which accumulates in the atmosphere, and removing it from there by the forces of nature itself is practically impossible. The main factor for energy remains the capacity utilization factor. Behind this cumbersome phrase lies the efficiency of the enterprise, simply put, its efficiency coefficient. A nuclear power plant has a higher value than any other. Nuclear is twice as efficient as burning coal, 3 times as efficient as wind energy, and 5 times as efficient as solar energy. True, nuclear power plants require major investments, both in money and time. Modern reactors can take 10 years to build and cost tens of billions of dollars. A thermal power plant of similar capacity will cost 3 to 4 times less and be built 3 times faster. The problem of radioactive waste has also not gone anywhere. Even with repeated fuel reprocessing, final decay products must be safely stored for thousands of years, which requires the creation of geological storage facilities. Local residents rarely like that. It is fear of accidents and radiation that Greens most often play on. This often leads to paradoxical results. For example, after the Fukushima accident, Germany completely abandoned nuclear energy and immediately not only became dependent on foreign gas, but is now also reopening coal power plants and expanding the mining of non-ecological coal. In general, green energy right now runs not into unwillingness to care about ecology. Its problems are technical and infrastructural. There are encouraging trends here. For example, the cost of lithium-ion batteries has fallen by almost 80% over the past 20 years. Energy storage projects, like Australia's Hornsdale Power Reserve and the already mentioned Moroccan Ouarzazate, have shown that giant battery cities have the ability to stabilize power grids, even if not the power grids of world capitals. Alternative solutions are also appearing. Green hydrogen, produced by electrolysis of water using excess solar and wind energy, is actively winning its place as fuel for transport. Hydrogen ships are being built in Norway. But green energy is still far from triumph. Even in California, where renewable energy sources are a national project, only 34% of generated electricity comes from sun and wind. If humanity ever switches to renewable energy, it will only be in the distant future. A lot can be imagined here. For example, the creation of a commercial thermonuclear reactor, which, if possible, would quickly make electricity practically free. One can imagine a single tidal power plant capable of supplying the entire Earth with electricity through the movement of ocean water. Or assume that one day, all the planet's deserts will be turned into one giant solar power plant. But for now, you can watch YouTube using electricity produced from burning coal, which was dug somewhere in a distant mine by a grimy and absolutely non-ecological man in a helmet. Subscribe to the channel, leave a like, write comments, and see you in the next episode.